Dad as well. Ron Paul joining me right now. Congressman, what did you think of that?
Well, it's understandable, and if you understand where they're coming from, you can figure out what they're doing. If they can't debate the issues and understand what non-intervention means and confuse everybody by screaming isolationism, they're just trying to destroy the messenger because they won't debate the issues. But I would say that people like Cheney and his friends are the real true isolationists. They have isolated Cuba. They are isolating Russia right now. They isolated Iraq until we bombed them and invaded them. And look at the mess we have there. We've isolated Iran, all due to these people who call us isolationists.
Well, you know, I guess I asked you when you were running for president, Congressman, and I've asked your son as well, what would justify intervention on either your part, your son? You can't speak for your son, I understand that. But a lot of folks are confused. It would be a very high bar, as it probably should be, to risk Americans' lives. But what would that bar be?
Well, an attack on us, an attack on our territory, an attack on, I wouldn't say like national security interests.
What about an attack on Israel?
Israel, no, not unless it goes to the Congress. But no, I don't see that as an attack on America. But if somebody sees something overseas that they say, well, it's significant enough, then you take it to the Congress and sort it out. But no,
but isn't that what the president does, sir? I mean, by that Republicans have criticized him for dragging his feet on this sort of thing one way or the other. You're saying in these type of cases, that's justified. Wait for congressional approval, as you would have waited on Syria, which is what he did, throw it back in Congress's lap?
And, of course, they would have waited on Iraq, and just think how many people would still be living and uninjured and not suffering from post-traumatic stress disease, and the money that we wouldn't have spent if you just stop and listen and pay close attention to the Constitution. Think about non-intervention, dismiss these people who scream isolationism,
right,
and they don't believe in free trade.
Well, how would you have responded, sir, then, to 9/11?
I would respond like I voted. I voted to go after those individuals responsible for it.
In Afghanistan.
That wasn't right, and that wasn't to be meant to be a license to invade every country forever and ever. I mean, that was a gross distortion. The neocons grabbed hold of that, grossly distorted it, and said this is forever war, and we never have to go back to Congress. Of course, they have been forced to go back to Congress because they overextended the definition. But no, you respond, but you also should try to understand why these things happen. If you don't do that, then it's all for waste. It's all loss of lives in vain. If they don't understand blowback and unintended consequences and interference in the internal affairs of other nations and violating all these countries' borders, we have to understand World War I and who drew up these lines. You know, the French and the British and the Americans drew up these lines.
But do you worry that all
that
makes sense when you hear it just the way you elaborated on it? But can you see how bad guys can seize on that and say, well, the Americans won't involve themselves in these crises, then we will. And so we're out as they try to take advantage of these conflicts that we ignore or run away from.
Well, we don't have responsibility for that. What did we accept by the Soviets in their heyday? I mean, they killed hundreds of millions of people. They expanded their empire, and they did all these things. We didn't send kids off to die in Moscow. No, you just don't do it. There's more to be lost than gained by having a precise definition. And besides, everybody has an agenda, you know, an oil agenda, expansion, religious agendas, all these kinds of things that justify this type of intervention. And if we don't look at that and reassess our foreign policy, I think wonderful things are happening today is that the failure not only of the economic system and fascism and communism, all of these things, the failure of our foreign policy is waking the American people up. There's never been quite the unanimity about no more war. We're sick and tired of them. Bring our troops home. And the majority are with us now. Of course, you know, in 2008, when I said don't do this, or in 2002 and 2003, I said let's stay out. You know, you were un-American if you said we shouldn't go to another war. But now it's a different world, and I think it's great that we're moving that direction.
So you would not even be tempted to involve yourself in Iraq, certainly now. Let them just implode or whatever, right?
Absolutely. Because
Okay.
why spend more lives over there?
Right.
I mean, look at what we've wasted already to go and spend more to justify the fact that we've lost a lot of lives. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They need to deal with it. We don't expect the Europeans to come in if we decide to do something with our borders on Mexico.
Right.
We don't expect the British and the French and the Germans to come over here and tell us what to do. So we should just stay out of that. The world would be better off for it, and they can solve their own problems. And I think the Middle East would have different property lines, different national lines. But I think that people ought to have a right of self-determination and a right to have a smaller unit of government. And believe me, those two principles would go a long way to securing peace in the world.
Ron Paul, always a pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.